Hello and welcome to All About Pigeons podcast. I'm Phil. We have Chris here on the line with us. What's up, Chris?
Hey, we are here.
So we have a person that had jumped on our Facebook page on the All About Pigeons podcast Facebook, and he's talking about getting into the pigeon game and kind of being overwhelmed with all the different stuff that you could buy to get started or to get going or to become a professional or whatever. There's a lot of stuff out there when it comes to getting into pigeons. I know you started off, Chris, as getting as a pigeon as a pet, right? That was your first one?
Right. Yeah, I just got my first one as a pet. I went over to give a guy a couple of chickens.
Okay.
And I was telling my buddy about how my wife was interested in getting one of these Budapest pigeons. They're the bug-eyed ones.
Oh yeah.
And that's a unicorn. So he ended up handing her a pigeon. It's a beautiful little pigeon. It turned out to be a classical frill satinet, and they got along great for like the first day until I got home and I played with it a little bit, and it became my pigeon. And then we were on the everlasting quest for that Budapest pigeon. And then it was all downhill from there.
What was like all involved, I guess, with when you first got set up? Did you already have cage work or did you kind of get like the dog crate thing and go with it that way? Or what were some of the initial things that you did when you first got going?
So when the guy gave it to me, he told me that it was loose in his back porch.
Oh.
He didn't know much about it, and he was feeding him chicken feed, and which turns out, I mean, it's okay. It was doing just fine on it, but yeah, I was feeding chicken feed, so I just started looking, and I had talked to another gentleman about adopting a Budapest pigeon, and he kind of gave me a really good rundown on what I needed. But basically, he said if I was going to keep an indoor bird, I needed a couple of square foot of cage. 4 square foot is kind of nice. Wire floor is the most hygienic, and so I went with it. And I mean, it's been working pretty good that way. But there's all different kinds of setups you can do. If you're just going to keep one bird, it's really easy just to have one cage. It's when you get multiples or different kinds of stuff. And it's going to depend on I think it depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to race, you need to vaccinate. Some clubs do vaccinate, and as I understand it, it's mandatory for the races. If you send them to one loft, they're vaccinated for salmonella PMP, I think.
Yeah, and that's where I mean that's
like that.
Yeah, if you're jumping in for racing, you're definitely going to want to get something for an outside loft. I mean, even homing pigeons, I mean, nothing really requires anything massive, and it goes back to what number are you talking? If you're talking about getting 5 birds or
Right.
25 birds, but
one bird was really easy. One bird was really easy.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, everybody should know this. If they want to take their bird to the vet, you pay for every single bird the vet sees.
Yeah.
Because technically he's supposed to make a treatment plan for each bird.
Yeah.
That can get rather expensive if you get several. So you need to kind of have the basics to maintain them.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too is I've noticed that too. I think Vita King, they offer free magazines, and I was interested in some of their products, and they sent it to me, and hey, they got a pretty good deal on waters. And then I started looking at like the not even the medication, just like the supplements and all the the stuff you give to healthy birds, I guess is what you could say. And like you say, you could really get carried away and just buy it all. And that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's, there's all kinds of, like, I've read articles and I've listened to other guys' podcasts or whatever, but and talked to older breeders, and there kind of is like a line in the sand when it comes to how to medicate or whatever, or how to supplement. A lot of guys will overly medicate, or I think it's this, and I've been there. Like I had a disease come through my loft, and I was just throwing medicine at, oh, I think it's this, I think it's this, and some of the medicine I was throwing was garbage anyway, wasn't even doing it. And some guys, I'd say it was driving me nuts. I had this thing going through my loft, and I'd go and check out these other guys' loft, and like I said before, the droppings are 2 feet high, but they're dry, and these guys are saying that you don't want to just keep medicating your birds because you're going to weaken their immune system, and it's not always the best thing to just throw all this stuff at them. And I had a lot of success for years of just clean water, food, keeping the loft clean, and not going crazy with it. And I've said in the episode that we did on loft designs, like, my lofts aren't even properly built pigeon lofts. These are converted buildings that I've just turned into a pigeon loft. I mean, there's definitely, like, the method of just keep it simple with these birds, but they'll give you as much rope as you want when it comes to you want to buy this, you want to buy that, they'll sell it to you. It's out there.
I personally, I mean, if you've got just a few birds, well, I think it's something everybody should have that's going to have birds. You should have 2 cages, whether it be 2 lofts or 2, of a certain size, or whatever you need. You need suitable housing for adding birds, or in case you do have an issue. It's also great to have an extra cage when you need to clean the cages and stuff too, because these things fly, and if you don't have them in the cage, you can't. When you're just starting out, it's not like you can just turn them loose and they'll come back.
Yeah, and I will say too, you mentioned this earlier, the cages with the wire floor for the droppings to go through. Oh man, so much nicer. Like you're saying, it's more hygienic, but also just for the sake of the person having to clean it. Because I've had homemade cages that I've made in the past that were OSB that you're scraping it all off all the time, and man, you get the kind with the wire floor where it just falls onto a tray. It's worth it if it costs a little bit more, or you have to wait a little bit longer to get something like that. That's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, as long as you can get that stuff dried out. You don't want them laying in their poop. You don't want them walking in it, stuff like that. So if you got them in a smaller cage like that, wire floor is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
Less maintenance. If it ever starts to stink, you've got an issue, because it doesn't stink.
Yeah, if it's wet, it'll smell, and that's not good.
Right. You don't want anything wet. You got to keep her dry. Paper's good. It helps. Stuff like that, as long as you don't just leave it stuck to the bottom of the tray.
Yeah.
But
I do think one thing too, and I want to put this out there, because when I first got started with pigeons, I had a heck of a time just getting the basic loft training. A lot of guys, who've been racing pigeons or whatever, having pigeons forever, they never talk about that. They'll get into like really in-depth stuff about feed and widowhood and all these other things to bring the birds back. And I mean, I ended up like talking with this guy over in Sri Lanka, man. He helped me out a lot with like settling birds and like that initial trap chaining. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Whether you're just for enjoyment flying or racing or whatever, the method that I use, and this might not be the right way, but it works. I'll put my young birds in the fly box, the loft that I want to fly them from. I'll settle them in there for a few weeks. The longer, the more settled. You don't want to wait too long, because then they'll have the ability to really take off and fly if they get too big. So, when they're young, settle them into the loft that you want them to be in. I have an aviary on my loft that goes up onto the roof, so they can go up on there, check out their surroundings, get comfortable. And then I'll spend 1 week in the morning, I will pull them out, put them in a cage, and I'll push them through the trapdoor for a week. And I should have said this too. When I feed, I whistle. I like to do the Sandman song from Kill Bill. You know that one? that's that's what I'm doing for mine when I'm out there. But anyways, so I whistle. That trains them. When they hear that whistle, it's time to eat. So you push them to the loft, you whistle, you feed them, and you do that for about a week. And I wish somebody would have told me that when I was first getting started, because I was doing all kinds of goofy stuff. And that's what I've done with mine, and that does work as far as getting a kit trained to a loft. And then from there, you can open the loft fly and just let them kind of fly around. And that's when you get different theories, right? Like, should I let the birds hang out on the ground? Should I flag them up and, get them going and stuff? But that would at least get your birds knowing how to use the bobs, get through the trap door, and to come when you call for feed. Anything I'm missing on that, Chris? Anything you want to add to that?
So my loft, you see my loft now. You've seen how it works. So I don't have a cage like that up top. I've just got a great big old fly cage hanging off a very modest loft. And so I've been using a leader bird, and it's not at all flawless. There's a big learning curve on that one. But yeah, I mean, you can do it the way Phil's talking about. Is a pretty good method, man. You can. I don't know. I got lucky. I had that first one that flew really good, and I had a long time to work with him. So he's a trap master. Like, he don't monkey around. So if they follow him in, I got it made. But if he goes in before they notice him, it takes me a minute.
Yeah, I was gonna say it gets easier too, because once you get that initial team trained, you can just slowly introduce your young birds. Give them time to settle. But when it comes to trap training, flying, whatever, they're gonna monkey see, monkey do. What them other birds are doing, they're gonna pick that up.
Well, don't be discouraged. Something I learned. I was raising birds, and I had just a few homers, and they took up quite a little of my time. And I got rollers, and I was like, wow, I could fly these guys right away. Rollers are awesome,
Yeah.
But and waiting on these homers, I was like, oh God, they're never gonna come. Well, it wasn't too long. I had a couple, and then I had a couple more, and then a couple more, and I lost a few and stuff like that. I still have a half a dozen of my own now, since January or whatever. But what happened with me was I got a guy in our club. He hooked me up with some nice birds, a dozen of them. 2 of them's a pair. They're breeder birds, so I put them to the side. But there's 10 of the other ones, and they're older than my oldest young bird that I have. And if you're flying birds that were bred somewhere else, you need to go through a little more trouble and take a little more time with them than I did. I trap trained them by hand several times, and they learned to trap right away. They knew where the food was and all that. But what happened was, when I turned them loose, they went exploring, and they didn't want to come in. And they knew when feed was there, so they would stay out overnight and come in the morning when I fed.
They're smart, man. They're smart.
But they're dangerous. I had bright white birds sitting in my tree. They don't know they're white.
That's another good point. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. But if you're getting birds, know that if you get some old birds, that those are going to be breeders. Those don't fly. You're going to put those off to the side. If they've been flown somewhere else, man, they're going to want to go back there, especially if they're homers. Now with rollers, you can get away with that if you settle them well. I personally, if I'm coming up on new birds, I like to get squeakers, because then I can fly them from here, I can train them from here, and then they get used to knowing me. And then once they get older, if I like what I see, then those ones will be the ones I breed. So me personally,
they gotta be baby.
I'd go after something younger myself. I like to have that, see them from a young age come up, be able to fly them, have them be used to me. Sometimes you go and buy someone's, I got this 10-year-old breeder bird, man. It might kick out an egg this year. You don't know what you're
Yeah.
gonna get. You might not be able to fly it and stuff. So you get a bird that you can watch, you can like see its traits, you like that stuff, then you put it in your breeding program. So I definitely think younger birds, and also like when it comes to obtaining birds, I mean, uh, so there's Craigslist, I guess. There's I would say the best place would probably be to go. I mean, if you want to get crazy with it, would be to go to something like the Pageant at Pigeons, or something like that. Something a little bit smaller would be like club shows, specialty breeds, stuff like that would be a good place to get birds. Like our club is doing, like we do 2 swap and sells a year. You can get and buy birds from there. I know that like the Velocity First Roller Club, they do an awesome launch show once a year, and they auction off some really good Birmingham roller birds. So if you can find a
Are we
special,
gonna get copyrighted for that?
hey man, we're helping them out because it's true. You've been there, I've been there, dude. They do some good launch shows. They really put on a good one.
Oh, dude, that's a good time. I had a great time when I went there.
And you can pick up good
some
quality birds. And I mean, you got the champions, I think, right? Didn't you buy one of the winners?
Yeah, but I didn't buy those. I won an arm wrestling event.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You got everybody there, didn't you?
There was a little. No, just one little kid. They told me if I could beat him, I could have those birds. I really wanted those birds.
Well, you got them.
There's no crying in competition.
Right. Well, yeah, rollers, man. That's all about competition. So if you got to arm wrestle the 9-year-old, man, yeah, that's competition, man. You gotta look it up and go with it. But that's what I would say. I mean, I would avoid. I'm not gonna drop names or nothing, but like I would avoid some pet shops when it comes to buying, and whether it is a pet shop or whether it is a club show, definitely look at the bird. Don't just take someone's word on it. Like, get in there and look, and even if you're new to this and you don't really know what you're looking at, like you'll be able to tell if it's sneezing or coughing or walking all funny and looking goofy, like that's not a good sign. You want to, a bird that when you look out the window and you see a bird, it's alert, it's moving around, it's looking around, a healthy bird. So, kind of do a little bit of homework on it, but, just use a lot of common sense when it comes to getting it, because especially if you're just starting off, whatever birds you get, especially if you're going to, really get a good flock of birds, those breeding pairs or whatever, however you do it, that's going to be your foundation. All the birds that you get in the future are going to come from these. So if you get some really, really good birds, you could have a really, really nice flock down the road. If you kind of just save money and, get some garbage, then you'll be dealing with that the whole time. I mean,
for sure. Hey, so my recommendations for anybody starting, like a little list, a good cage loft situation. You need hygienic waters. You need waters that they can't crap in. There's lots of solutions for that, but you need waters that they can't crap in. And I like waters that have enough water to where they have to be changed once a day. When I change my water, I clean that thing.
Yeah.
That's a good habit. I don't like to. Algae doesn't hurt anything, but feces and contamination does. And you need a good hygienic feeder as well. A dowel feeder is nice. They can be very inexpensive to build if you ever play with popsicle sticks in elementary school. They're pretty easy to build. Tongue depressors too. And then you don't necessarily need a dowel feeder. You can do it out of PVC pipe with a hole saw. There's all different kinds of ways, but you want to keep them from crapping in their food.
Yeah, don't get a chicken water one. Those are the worst.
No. Yeah, you want to make sure that they have no way to crap or put their dirty little birdie feet in their food or their water. And then let them bathe every once in a while. You just use an open tray for that. I like to put a little bit of borax in it. Keeps the feathers nice. Keeps the bugs down, stuff like that. But if you focus more on hygiene and husbandry than you do medication, you will have far less problems.
Yeah.
That's what I recommend.
Yeah.
I don't recommend buying a bunch of nets. I recommend keeping her clean, getting good birds, and if you're gonna add birds to your flock, to your situation, you need to quarantine them for minimum 2 weeks. Pay attention to everything.
And that goes back to you're talking about having 2 cages. That's another good reason right there. Let's say you got a couple birds and you go and get a couple more, quarantine those birds in a separate cage, separate water, separate feed. And the other thing, like you kind of touched on, was you can make a lot of this stuff. Sam Smitty has a pretty cool YouTube channel where he talks about getting a hole saw, cutting into like a milk jug, and there's a water or there's a feeder where they can't poop in. If you're just getting up and going with it, man, they got some pretty cool DIY stuff too.
That's the best way to get your birds sick is contaminated water, letting them eat off the ground in other birds' feces, and overpopulation, overcrowding. Because birds have the tendency to shed disease through their sinuses. They sneeze that stuff out and they crap it out. Okay? Well, if they're overpopulated and they're overcrowded, they ain't got no way to get away from it. And most of these diseases are spread through particulates or feces.
Yep.
They don't wear masks.
Yeah, and I think it's like, we talked about this in the loft design. I think it's right, isn't it? It's a square foot per bird. And I think that's maximum, really. I mean, I would try to go at least twice that. And it doesn't take that much. Like, you can have a nice little, you can build these things out of scrap, and still give the birds plenty of room. But, yeah.
So I have a gentleman that offered me a bit of advice on his deal. He likes 4 square feet per bird. 15 birds in a 160 square foot loft. That's 10 square foot per bird.
Yeah.
But I'm at about 2 square foot right now. 1 square foot will work. I mean, you can do it, but you got to keep it clean.
Yeah, and it'd be more work too if you really, like if I had my 8x8 loft with 64 birds. If I had 64 birds in there, man, I'd be busy cleaning that thing.
Chaos. It's chaos. You wouldn't have enough room. You wouldn't like it, I don't think.
Right, yeah. It would be. That'd be pushing it. That'd really be pushing it, yeah.
But now, like, mine technically is only a 32 square foot loft.
Okay.
My race loft? Okay, it's 4x8, right?
Yeah.
The fly cage, which is only half open, that's another 4x8. But I have wire floors in it. So that effectively allows me that's a game changer, that wire floor, man.
Yeah.
You got ventilation. The poop dries out far enough away. They can't eat in the poop. They can't pick corn out of the poop or any other stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, that's just great.
Well, we're coming up against the clock here right now, but I do want to say thanks for commenting on our Facebook, and anybody else ever has any questions or anything that you'd like to see us talk on, definitely hit up our Facebook page, All About Pigeons Podcast on Facebook. Well, Kristen, thanks for coming on today and talking with us a little bit, and we'll see you again later on.
All right.